Thank you. So, first of all, I want to say thank you all for being here. You seem like a super attentive audience, which is really cool. I feel like most of the things I go to, like, everybody's just like buried, like completely not paying attention. So thank you for being an awesome audience. I'm super excited to be here. And thank you, Carolina, and your team for putting everything together. How are all these amazing talks today? Pretty great? I hope you all learned something. I learned something, which is better than my previous state. So like Alex said, I'm Elyse. I work at RetailMeNot in Austin. I'm a front-end architect there, so working on internal tools, style guides, stuff like Jessica was talking about, visual regression testing, that kind of stuff. I worked on a lot of large-scale enterprise front-end applications, and I used to teach front-end dev. And I obviously speak, and so people are like, well, how did you get to where you are? Like, you have this great job, you're going to conferences, like, you're going to, start doing this podcast, like, do you know all the right people? Like, how did you get to do this? Like, what's the secret? So just to set the record straight, and I'm sure I speak for all of the other speakers and people who are famous on the internet, I was in the right place at the right time. I got really lucky because there are people way better than me at this. I muddle around. I have no idea if I can do the job that I'm hired for. I just guess and hope for the best. And I say yes to everything, and then I'm like, oh God, I'm going to totally fail at this. And I write all my talks at the last minute, and I panic on Twitter, and I spend all my time freaking out. This is normally how it goes. And while that is all true, here's another truth. I fought hard to do work that I believed in, and I took risks, and I tried new things, and I recognized opportunities when they arrived, and sometimes they're subtly disguised as hard work, which is very distressing. I let people take chances on me and didn't turn them down out of fear. I learned that a compliment feels way better when you don't immediately go, oh, no, I'm not good at that, I can't, no, that's not me. And I discovered that seeing somebody else succeed because of something I did, or see them learn something, brought me a lot of joy, and even more joy to kind of not take that credit, but kind of shine the light back on them and on their success. So I want to tell you a story. There's an Indian story that my yoga teacher told us one time in class about a woman being chased by tigers. And she's running, and there's tigers following her, and they're getting closer and closer. And she comes to the edge of a cliff, and she looks down, and she looks back, and she sees the tigers behind her, and she sees some vines on the cliff, so she's like, oh, this is a great idea, I'm going to climb down this cliff. And so then she looks down while she's hanging off these vines, and she sees that there are tigers below her as well. So she then notices this beautiful little bunch of wild strawberries. It's growing on a ledge in the cliff. And she looks at the tigers up above her, and she looks at the tigers down below her, and she picks a strawberry, and she eats it, and she enjoys it immensely. The tigers don't matter. My tigers are being hired for jobs that I know that I can't do, that I have never done before. My tigers are getting up and talking to you about my story and fear and learning and feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing, and why do I deserve to be up here, and you're all just gonna boo me immediately off stage. And my tigers are thinking to myself, oh, if you did more, if you worked all 8 hours in a day instead of going on Facebook, and if you worked as hard as all these other people, then you would be good at your job, and then you would get to do all the things that you wanted to do. And JavaScript, because I haven't had time to learn as much of it as I would like. But there will always be tigers. We have to forget the tigers that are waiting to devour us. We have to focus on what we're capable of doing right now. We're drawn to challenges without knowing if we can face them, and so then we become really afraid to try. We focus on the things that we're afraid of, and we get an inability to focus on the actual work, and we become convinced that we can't do these things, that those things are for other people and not for us. And our focus is on our tigers and not on the strawberries. So today I want to talk a little bit about the shit we don't know. And I'm going to say that a lot, and you're going to be confused, and so am I. And how we can be intentful about how we learn, how we challenge ourselves, and share our knowledge. And Claudina's talk this morning was amazing. I think it was a really, really good bookend at the beginning and end here, what I want to talk to you about. And she mentioned not squashing the impulse to create and to not be mean to each other. And so I want you to keep that in mind as we go into this part. So I want you to think for a minute about something that you want to learn and something that you're struggling with. Maybe it's starting a blog or public speaking or trying Sass or learning a JavaScript framework or something like that. So if you're brave, share them on Twitter. The last time I gave this talk, we had some really, really cool ones shared on Twitter. If you are even more brave, does anybody want to share one out loud?
Command line.
The command line, yeah, it's terrible. It's really terrible. I feel you. Anybody else? What are you struggling with? Public speaking? Yes? Yeah, you're not alone. Does anybody do yoga? We have any yogis? Awesome. So I started a couple years ago after kind of discovering how mentally calming it could be, and I stuck with it because I realized that it had a lot in common with coding. And this is my instructor, Laura, and she makes us regularly work on really advanced poses that we can't do. And she'll say, your perfect pose is the one that you are doing right now. Maybe it's different than what the person next to you is doing. Maybe your handstand is just kind of attempting to kick your feet up, and I can occasionally get upside down, and that's cool, and she can do this. But we are all doing our perfect pose. She says the work that you do is the important part. Every time you kick, every time you get frustrated, every time you shake and your muscles shake and you fall over, you're doing the work, you're being challenged, and that's the important part. So back this March, I guess, of last year, we started to do a lot of standing splits. So if any of you yogis know this pose, you know that nobody looks like this, ever. Ever. I've never seen anybody do this in real life. And I used to loathe this pose because it's really, really hard. And so sometime last year, I was like, I was kind of enjoying it. Like, we were doing it a lot in class, and I was like, oh, this is like, I was looking forward to it coming up in class. And I kind of admitted it, and they were like kind of making fun of me, and my instinctual response was, well, I'm not good at it. I'm not good at it. But why do I say I'm not good at it? Does being challenged not matter? Is being good at something the only measure of its worth? Why do we say I'm not good at this instead of this challenges me? I like standing splits. I like struggling with JavaScript. I like tackling new things that I'm not sure I can do because that's how I learn. I see progress. I am doing the work that matters. So every time you scour Stack Overflow, every time you Google, and you're looking for an answer that's so simple that nobody's going to post about it, and you're like, seriously, for the love of God, why can't somebody just tell me, like, why to do this? You're doing the work, and you are being challenged. Doing something challenging is really painful. And you know this cycle. You get inspired. And some baby steps, a little success. Then you hit this roadblock, and you're frustrated, and you're like, oh, wash, rinse, repeat, right? And as soon as there's something you've succeeded at learning, people are just like, they assume that you're born knowing it. They're like, oh, wow, like I could never do that. Like as if you aren't looking at somebody else, like thinking the exact same thing. And learning something new is really difficult, especially in tech. And there's 10 trillion ways to do the same thing. And tutorials assume you're using some tool and you're not. And God forbid you typo something or leave out a bracket, or it's the worst. So this guy, Steve Schwartz, wrote this blog post called No One Knows What the Fuck They're Doing, excuse my language, subtitled The 3 Types of Knowledge, and he talks about learning and the imposter syndrome, and he says there is the shit you know, where's the laser pointer? There's the shit you know you don't know, and the shit you don't know. And the red slice is unimaginably huge because he says it is not to scale. Okay. And so he says, traditional school would lead you to believe that you must cram as much information as possible into the shit you know category. This is how you learn. You learn all of this shit that you suddenly now know. And he says, I am going to be bold and suggest that this is wrong. The goal is not to put stuff into the shit you know category. It is to take as much as possible out of the shit you know, the shit you don't know category, and put it into the shit you don't know. I told you it was confusing. So he gives an example. He says, imagine you're a nurse, and you need to administer a drug to a patient. If you know that this prescribed drug reacts negatively with another drug, you know not to prescribe it. If you remember that the drug has a lot of side effects and tends to react, but you don't really know what's going to happen, you know either to look it up or ask somebody, or at least err on the safe side and not give it to them. So the only dangerous scenario is not realizing that there could even be any side effects or reactions. And so then you give them this drug and you kill your poor patient and everybody's sad. So the only dangerous category is the shit you don't know. For any profession, not just nursing, but for us too. In dev or design, we spend a lot of time iterating, and we remove things from this category. We feel like we have no clue what we're doing, but we see other people being very confident. But here's the secret. All those confident people out there, they fall into one of 2 categories. First, they have figured this out, and so they deserve it, the praise, no more or no less than you do. They have a very large shit they know they don't know category, and we can only imagine how immense the shit we don't know category is, and they just spend time trying to remove stuff. The second group legitimately thinks they know everything, and they don't, and they're very egotistical, and they spend all their time putting you down and telling you that here's all the stuff that you don't know, and we don't like those people. Like Claudina was saying, we have to be nice. So the real reason you feel like a fraud is because you have actually been successful in taking information out of the shit you don't know category and putting it into the shit you don't know. So you have this huge, immense amount of knowledge about all the stuff that you don't know about. And the good news is this makes you able to iterate and improve, and the bad news is that mostly you feel dumb and helpless all of the time. This awkward little table. So in 1980, who's heard of this? The Dreyfus model of skill acquisition, some of you? Okay. So this was produced in 1980, and it's kind of pretty well known as like the model of skill acquisition, right? So you begin as a novice, continue on to become an advanced beginner, competent, proficient, and then finally an expert. And the gist of it is that you move from dogmatic following of rules and lack of big picture to deliberate planning and perceiving deviations from the normal pattern to intuitive transcending of rules and envisioning what is possible. So that's when you're an expert. You can just know all the things, right? When you start learning a new skill, you're completely incompetent. You're frustrated. You have to be spoon-fed the steps. And Dreyfus put it, you like a baby, pick it up by imitation and floundering. This poor little girl. Whoa, she's so cute. So then you reach a point where the skill becomes possible to practice alone, right? You're excited, and you're working hard, and you're iterating rapidly, and you're improving, and this is really, really great. And so then you get past this, and you're like, now this is really hard. Like, I've reached this plateau in my knowledge where I don't really know how to get any better. I have learned as much as I can about this topic. And so some people give up. Some people just assume they know everything and refuse to continue to learn. But some of us just give up, and we're like, we're never going to progress. We're never going to take risks. And we're afraid to admit maybe to our colleagues or our coworkers or friends that we don't actually know how to do the thing that we've kind of like said we know how to do, or we know how to do some of it, and then they're talking about something that like you didn't realize you could do in that particular language, and you're like, I totally knew that. That's obviously, duh, I did that a long time ago. So, maybe one time you did admit that you didn't know how to do a thing, and the response is like, oh, do you have trouble with that? Like, oh, it's so easy. Like, you just got to install the XFB CLI tools with NPM, and then you run the task file and the terminal and California style, blah, blah, blah. Like, it works great, and you're like, yeah, of course. Obviously, I knew how to do that. No big deal. Thanks, guys. We need help. We're scared to try new things. We're scared to admit our failures. We need help from somebody who's better than us. We need to take pride in our accomplishments, right? And we need to be proud of ourselves, but we also need to know that our education is not complete. We need somebody to put us back kind of on that beginner track. We need to teach others so that we can learn even more about what we already know by having to explain it to somebody else. Because here's a fact. We are all bad programmers. Tyler Menezes is a program director for student R&D, and he teaches middle school through college students how to program. He says almost no good programmers think they're good. Trying to program is a very quiet and subtle activity. So if you walk around a hackathon, like, how do you know who's progressing? You don't. You can't tell who's stuck. You just see people working, and then, boom, they come up with this great project. So we tend to judge others by the end result, and we judge ourselves by the struggle it took to get there. He says, I met a student who wanted to become a programmer and at a hackathon, and I asked him what he wanted to make and gave him some tips, and he came back with a lot of questions, and so I asked him, well, like, what were you searching for? And he was like, well, I was searching for everything, so I gave up. He led him over to a friend who I believe is working at Facebook, and he's like, yo, how many of your tabs are Stack Overflow or Google? It was like 15 or 20. Well, this is like an experienced developer, right? When we're learning something new, we feel like we're drowning in information. We're barely able to keep our heads above water. But this is normal, because your years of experience only give you a more complex thing to search for, not that you search less. We all feel this way. This is a young industry. 5 years ago, some of the mainstays of our jobs didn't even exist. These tools, these frameworks, these are new things. So it's okay that you don't necessarily know how to do all of these things. All right, I'm going to make you stand up again. Stand up. Stand up, everybody. Cool. All right. So you have 60 seconds, and I want you to introduce yourself to everybody who's sitting around you super quick because we don't have a whole lot of time. Just say your name, say hi, and I'm going to cut you off in like 45 seconds. All right, did you meet all your neighbors? Did you make some new friends? Stay standing, stay standing. I know you were all ready to sit back down. All right, I have a question. Think back on your last year of work. The last year, all of 2014. Did you ever have a moment where you felt like you had no idea what you were doing? If the answer is yes, and you felt like an idiot, stay standing up, which means all of you who are sitting down probably need to stand up. All right. If the answer is no, you have never struggled, you can sit down. So now, if you've been working professionally, yeah, those of you sitting down are just being jerks. If you have been working professionally for 1 year, sit down. 2, 5, 6, 8. Developing, working, making money for your skills, whatever. All right, look, the people that are still standing, they've struggled with things too. These are people that we respect and like. You can all sit down now, I'm sorry. These are people who have been at this for a while, right? And they still have doubts. And veterans, those of you who have been working for a long time, you still struggle. And so you should work really hard to make sure that your novices around you and the beginners that you work with don't feel like you know everything, and that they know that it's okay that you feel like an idiot sometimes too. So how do we do this? How do we make ourselves feel good about our work? How do we make ourselves feel good about being a beginner? And how do we make people around us feel good about it? So I have 6 things. We're going to hop through these super quick. So first of all, call it tiger retaliation, if you will. This poor guy. It's so good. First of all, be lucky. So you know the kind of person that they say, oh, they have all the luck, right? They probably work pretty hard at it. Luck depends not just on a lucky thing happening to you, but identifying it and acting on it. And this is entirely up to you. This is entirely internal. So if you're looking for opportunities, you'll see them when they come your way. And if you're convinced you can't do something, you're just going to turn all of these opportunities that are there for you down. You don't always know what you can do. And the sheer fact that someone asked you to do something or invited you to do something means that they believe that you can do it. Maybe you should take them up on it and see what happens. So Gina, who is sitting over here, for a long hi Gina, for a long time, well, and still is one of my industry heroes. She, her talks on refactoring inspired a lot of my work and my first talk, and so I always kind of like see her stuff and be like, oh man, like I wanna do that. And so last year we were here for Camp Sass in San Francisco with Claudina and a bunch of the women who were speakers and stuff. We all had brunch, and there were a lot of mimosas, and then at some point it came up that we did kind of similar work, and Claudina convinced the 2 of us to submit a joint workshop to CSSConf. And I had this moment where I was like, you want to work with me? Me? I'm nobody. Who am I? Like, I'm nobody, and like you're famous on the internet and you want to work, this is stupid. But we had a really, really good time, and I think we both learned a ton. And for me, that was a moment of like, hey, I'm recognizing that this is an opportunity and it's really scary and I don't necessarily feel like I deserve it, but okay, I'm going to take it and I'm going to see what happens. Second, set goals. So if you have something you want to do, whether it's trying Sass or redesigning your blog or learning to cook the world's most perfect scrambled eggs or get 60% female speakers at a conference, right? Like, how do you do that? How do you start? We are made of the words that we choose. If we refuse to speak or define our goals, they will never come true. They will always be imaginary for us. So what is your goal? How do you know when you will get there? What steps can you take? What small, attainable tasks can you do to get yourself to this place? So you don't master JavaScript or scrambled eggs or solve diversity in tech in one giant leap in which you have done everything. You take baby steps. Kate Matsudera blogs about productivity, and she writes, I make excuses like, I only have an hour, and so I guess I will wait to start until I have more time. But the reality is sometimes you only have an hour, and sometimes you just don't want to start because the work is really hard. There are no shortcuts. If you don't have small goals, you'll never reach your big ones. You cannot jump from novice to expert. And if you never define the steps along the way, your goal will only ever be a wish. This is my favorite one. Work joyously. You're always looking at people and you're like, oh, wow, they're so productive. Like, how did they get to be that way? So I want to tell you a little story about my boyfriend, Jeffrey. He's totally the domestic one in our relationship, which is great. And he's always doing these like little things around the house. And so he'll like fold clean socks like in between showering and like eating breakfast. And at first I was like, why are you just save it for later when you get home and we'll do all this cleaning all at once. But his place is clutter-free and lovely to come home to. And I have a knee-deep pile of laundry on the floor. And these small things are how you get things done, right? You don't get inspired and just like spit out this perfect conference talk, or like your laundry just doesn't do itself for you. Things get done in these small, attainable, and sometimes very tedious tasks over time. The famous Picasso quote that I'm sure most of you have heard. So when I wanted to get more involved in the tech community, the first step I took was to TA a girl development class. And I was like, I'm going to talk, I'm going to get my own class. I'm going to do it all myself. And I kept telling people this, and suddenly there was an opportunity to do so, so I took it, and then like, crap, there was a deadline, and I had to actually do work to like make my class. The night before, I was like having fever dreams about how it was all going to go wrong. But a few months later, it was successful, and I gave my first ever capital T talk. This is me way in the back, which you can't see, at Refresh Austin. And just so you know, this was fucking terrifying because it was like the biggest Refresh Austin that they'd had in like a year and a half. And my boss and two of my exes and my boyfriend Jeffrey, who I just told you about, we were going to go on our first date the next night, and they were all there. But seriously, like the hardest part isn't standing up here, right? Like this is the easy part, and it's not the travel, it's not the public speaking, it's not all that. It's sitting down on a beautiful Saturday afternoon and actually like doing the work and iterating and maybe folding a pair of socks in between. Henry Miller is an American writer, and he wrote these commandments of work, and I love these. Don't be nervous. Work calmly, joyously, recklessly on whatever is in hand. When you can't create, you can work. Forget the books you want to write. Think only of the book you are writing. It's so powerful. So good. I love this stuff. I will share these out with you. We don't always feel like we can create that masterpiece, right? We don't always feel like we can do this like big thing in our head. And I regularly fall asleep like dreaming about the stuff that I'm going to do at work and wake up like, oh my God, when can I get a coffee and a breakfast taco? Like I can't function, and then all my ideas are obviously gone. So sometimes we just have to do the work, and we have to do it joyfully. Share your doubts. The biggest hurdle in doing the work usually isn't your ability, it's your own self-doubt. So when our fears remain in our head, they take on a life of their own. And Kate, it's another Kate Matsudaira quote, and she talks about hurricane days, where the days are just like on a roll and everything's awesome and going great, and she's like, oh man, if I could do this every day, like that would get so much done. And I think this all the time. I like berate myself for the days that like I skip yoga and I don't work on the side project and I didn't do the dishes and things are a mess. I'm never going to get that talk, and I'm never going to get a promotion, and I'm never going to blah, 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 and I'm never going to be able to do it. I'm a horrible, lazy waste of air, and I just should just go die in a corner or something, and I hate myself. But it's okay. It's okay. Be kind to yourself. Kate writes, it was suggested to me that imagine that I was directing that talk at a friend rather than at myself. And she says I was horrified. I would never say those things to my best friend. So I try to be realistic, right? Did I skip the cleaning to like get drunk on wine on the couch and watch TV, or did I just like actually have a long week and maybe I needed the break? Just try to be kind to yourself. When you're gutsy enough to define your fears, they seem really silly. So when you say your horrible self-doubts out loud or to your friend, like they'll probably have some really sane advice for you, like, oh, okay, calm down, that's fine. Why don't you just do like one little step at a time? Fifth, celebrate your wins. So defining your goals is important, but how do you know when you're going to get there? So remember, you judge others by their end result and what they post on Facebook and Twitter, and you judge yourself by all the hard work that you had to put in. So if you know what it means to succeed, it makes it hard to later discount your wins. If you wait until you hit your ultimate goal, you'll never ever get to succeed. If you wait till you have mastery, you'll never get to celebrate. So I have a friend, Matt Jared, who taught himself to code, and he came and spoke to my students when I was teaching, and he said every time he succeeds at something that he was struggling with, he plays the I'm the smartest man alive clip from Billy Madison. And he says, I force that cue, like that celebration of success, so when I'm struggling, I know that that's coming. So be sure to celebrate yourself when you do something, no matter how small it seems. And lastly, help others. So I read this article about startup entrepreneurs who are like burning out and they're like afraid to admit their fear of failure. And it said, rather than showing vulnerability, business leaders have practiced what social psychiatrists call impression management, also known as fake it till you make it. Let's go back to this tiger ignoring strawberry story. I'm gonna add a character. So this new guy comes riding in on a tiger to get some strawberries. He's like, yeah, it's a direct route. Like, I'm gonna go straight for those strawberries on this fucking tiger. And our heroine's up on her cliff and she's like, oh my God, this guy's totally got it together. Like, he's so brave. Like, I wish I could have done that. Like, how did I end up here, like, hanging on some vines? And the guy on the tiger's like, how the fuck did I get on a tiger? And I wanna be up there where she is. We're all struggling, right? Maybe with different things. But we are all simultaneously riding some tiger or freaking out about them and also kind of looking on in awe. So we sometimes conflate fake it till you make it with like going on the defensive and be like, yeah, I totally know how to do that. But in reality, it's just about accepting where you are in your journey and being confident and not putting anybody else down because they're trying and they're struggling too. And it's rare that not knowing the answer makes you look like an idiot. What makes you look like an idiot is like word vomiting, like when you don't know the answer and like bluffing. John Alspaugh, the director of engineering at Etsy, and he writes this blog post, and he says, mature engineers lift the skills and expertise of those around them. And this is something that I have really struggled with. Like, can I lift the skills and the expertise and the emotions of those around me? Can I lift them up and bring them with me on their successes and not put them down for the things that they don't know? So I want to challenge you. Talk to other people about your goals. Share your doubts. Tweet them. Talk about them after the conference. Don't be afraid to say what you struggle with or what you have failed at, right? Other people have probably struggled with something similar, or more likely, they know how to do a thing that you don't, and you know how to do a thing that they don't, and you can actually help each other. Ask other people about their goals. Listen to them. Ask them to share their doubts, and don't judge them if they're struggling with something that you already know how to do. If you can help them, do it, and then like high five, because you're all smart, talented, strawberry-eating tiger conquerors, and that's awesome. So you don't have to write a popular blog. You don't have to speak in public. You don't have to teach. But you do have to collaborate without posturing and without ego. There will always be somebody who knows more than you, and there will always be somebody who knows less. You will always fall on that spectrum. You do have to share your doubts so that everybody else who's doubting can see that and feel a little bit better. And you have to have a lucky attitude. Accept the opportunities and work joyously when that work is put in front of you. And remember, the tigers don't matter. Thank you.